Sharon Jones, a powerful soul and blues singer who achieved fame in midlife and returned to touring this year after fighting cancer, has died.
They were once the pride of the black community, the brightest stars in the R&B sky, bringing hope, freedom, and songs that touched the hearts of millions. Yet one was paralyzed on stage while performing. Another, the Queen of Soul, sang her last song after learning that a terrible disease was destroying every cell in her body. Behind the glory are tears. Behind the smiles are long nights when no medicine could ease the pain. And what you are about to witness in this video is even more haunting. 21 black R&B singers who gave up their careers due to terminal illnesses. If music has ever brought back your best memories, please join us on this journey of reminiscence. Like if you have heard one of these voices, and share so that their light does not fade away in silence. 21. Johnny Adams. The voice of an angel. Falls into silence. People call him the man with the voice of an angel. Johnny Adams once melted millions of hearts with his soaring tenor voice, a blend of soul, blues, and gospel. He was not loud, not ostentatious, but every time he sang, the whole audience seemed to stop breathing. With love songs like "Reconsider Me," he became a symbol of gentleness and depth in Southern music. But behind the stage lights, few people knew that Johnny was hiding a private battle. At the peak of his career, he discovered he had prostate cancer. The disease came silently, not as loud as a sharp pain, but persistent like a small needle piercing every day, gnawing away at the life inside. In the fall of 1997, at a rehearsal in New Orleans, Johnny suddenly sat down in the middle of a song. His voice faltered, trembling. His assistant stepped forward to help him, and Johnny's eyes were filled with panic. "I can't control my breathing," he whispered, sweat pouring down his face. This was no ordinary fatigue. It was the first sign that his body was giving up. Shows were canceled, recording contracts were postponed indefinitely. Those close to him said that Johnny would often sit quietly in the studio, staring into the microphone as if waiting for something that would never come back. One day, he told his manager, "I'm afraid I won't be able to sing anymore." That was his farewell. In his final months, Johnny Adams lived a private life, away from the public. He didn't want anyone to see him weak, but that didn't stop the audience from missing him. When news of his death broke in September 1998, New Orleans was filled with silence. The silence wasn't because he was gone, but because the world had just lost a voice that could never be replaced. A man who devoted his life to music and then quietly disappeared from an illness he never complained about. Life is short. Looking back at Johnny's story, we realize that health is not a given, and that sometimes a voice stops not because it is no longer beautiful, but because it has sung too much for the world. 20. Don Covay. A silent talent after a stroke. Don Covay is not a name that is mentioned every day, but to true soul and R&B lovers, he is an underground legend. Having written for Aretha Franklin, Otis Redding, and himself with hits like "Mercy, Mercy," Don was not just an artist, but a tireless creator. His voice carried a twisting, sharp edge, telling a story with each cut like a cut. But then, one afternoon in December 1992, everything changed forever. Don was at a musician friend's house in Brooklyn when he suddenly collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital with a massive stroke. He was paralyzed, his mouth was crooked, his right hand was twitching. And worse, his voice was broken like a broken plate. Once a breath controller, Don could no longer form complete sentences. He struggled to speak, to write down each word, but the music in his head would not come out. Doctors said his chances of recovery were slim, and he knew it. "I've written hundreds of songs," he said in a therapy session. "Now, I can't even say my name properly." For the next 6 years, Don tried to get back to work, if only to compose, if only to tap out a beat. But his body was no longer cooperating. His guitar was gathering dust. The studio closed. His artist friends came to visit him, bringing new recordings, but Don just nodded, tears falling without a word. He did not announce his retirement, but the world understood that a genius had to leave the game helplessly. When he passed away in 2015, many people learned that Don Covay had lived almost in seclusion for the last 20 years of his life. No stage, no lights, no microphone. All that remained was the memory of a man who taught the world that soul music is not just singing, but also the voice of the soul. Don Covay needed no further words. His silence was the saddest music he ever wrote. And it reminds us that every day we breathe, speak, and sing is a gift that should not be wasted. 19th O.V. Wright, the voice that sobbed to ashes. He was once called Memphis Soul's saddest soul. O.V. Wright's voice carried a wordless sob. One note from his music was enough to make the listener fall silent. From heartbreaking love songs like A Nickel and a Nail to Ace of Spades, he sang not as a performer, but as someone pouring out his soul. Fame came quickly, but tragedy didn't wait long. In the late 70s, O.V. began coughing constantly, feeling a sharp pain every time he spoke. At first, he thought it was just the after effects of years of smoking. But as the pain became more severe, he reluctantly went to see a doctor. The diagnosis was as cold as a verdict: terminal lung cancer with metastasis. Not that there were no warning signs. One night in Texas, in the middle of a performance of 8 men, 4 women, he suddenly collapsed, clutching his chest, his eyes glazed over. The band stopped. The audience thought it was a dramatic performance, but he knew he didn't have much time left. The months that followed were a series of devastation. He refused chemotherapy, opting instead for painkillers so he could sing a few more nights. A close friend recalled, O.V. sat by the window, looked up at the sky and said, "I'm not going to die in the hospital. I'm going to die with music in my heart." His final performance at a small hall in Mississippi is a haunting memory. His voice shook, he coughed incessantly, but he managed to finish the song. When the curtain closed, he slumped in his chair, sweat soaking his shirt, without saying a word. He died in 1980, quietly as he had left. No warning, no grand send-off. A great artist falls silent in life like a candle burning to its last drop of wax. The story of O.V. Wright reminds us that not all lights are extinguished by time. Some are extinguished by illness when they are at their brightest. Love your voice, your legs, your health, because they can disappear before you even have a chance to say goodbye. 18. Marvin Gaye, the fallen angel in the world. Marvin Gaye was once called the Prince of Motown, a musical genius who blended soul, funk, and R&B, bringing the world classics like What's Going On and Let's Get It On. He was handsome, charming, successful, and seemed to have everything a man could dream of. But behind those captivating eyes, Marvin had a troubled soul. He struggled with depression, anxiety, and loneliness that stemmed from his abusive father as a child. The psychological wounds never healed, even when he was at the peak of his glory. In 1979, Marvin suddenly disappeared from the stage. No explanation, no sharing with the audience. People only knew that he was living in seclusion in Belgium, away from showbiz, and dependent on illegal drugs. His terminal illness was not in his body, but in his mind. In a rare interview, Marvin's former manager recalled, "He was curled up on the sofa, mumbling prayers. He didn't believe he could love, sing, or even exist." In April 1983, Marvin returned to the stage on the Sexual Healing Tour. But fans felt the difference. He no longer had the old aura, only moments of brilliance scattered between the delirium. Once backstage, he leaned his head on a friend's shoulder and whispered, "I don't see any way out." Then the worst happened. Less than a year later, Marvin was shot dead by his father during an argument. A painful death for a soul that had suffered so much pain inside. But what many people don't know is, Marvin had given up his career long before that, when mental illness quietly defeated him every day. Marvin Gaye didn't die overnight. He passed away gradually, little by little, when music was no longer a place to heal, but a place to hide. Marvin's story makes us understand that not all illnesses are visible. Some wounds can only be heard with the heart. If you see someone smiling but their eyes are sad, don't be quick to believe they are okay. Slow down, listen more, and love your soul as if it could break at any moment. 17. Major Lance. The Silent Fall of Chicago. Soul. Major Lance was a living dream of Chicago soul music in the 60s. With his lively performance style and youthful voice, he brought classic hits such as The Monkey Time and His radiant face, his smile lit up the stage. Lance was a symbol of joy and youth amid social unrest for African Americans. But that always dancing, always happy image hid a dark truth. His body was slowly decaying in silence. The headaches, the constant fatigue, the unexplained shortness of breath. Lance had thought it was just age, but an early diagnosis in the late 1980s revealed that he was suffering from a series of chronic diseases: high blood pressure, diabetes, liver failure, heart damage, all of which came together like a never-ending sentence. During a performance at the Apollo Theater in 1988, in the middle of Ain't No Soul, In These Old Shoes, he abruptly stopped singing, turned backstage, and collapsed. The audience thought it was a strange performance, but the band didn't. They rushed over, and the manager called an ambulance. Blood was pouring from his nose. His blood pressure was dangerously high. It was the first time Major Lance had to cancel a show in his career. From then on, the tours became less frequent. Recording schedules were postponed indefinitely. There were weeks when he didn't get out of bed. "I would see him sitting there for hours, looking at his shoes, not saying anything," recalled a close musician. He knew he wasn't going anywhere with them. Major Lance never announced his retirement, but he never returned to the stage. He lived out the rest of his life in a small apartment in Decatur, Georgia, occasionally taking calls from former bandmates. When he died of heart failure in 1994, the press reported only briefly. But for those who heard him, it was the silence of an era. Major Lance's story is a poignant reminder that stage joy is sometimes just a mask. Take care of your body, because it can't sing forever. And if you ever fall in love with one of his songs, remember that behind the melody was a man who was so hurt that he couldn't sing again. 16. Ray Charles. The blind genius who quietly retired due to internal rotting. Ray Charles was more than just an artist. He was a living definition of resilience. Born poor and completely blind at the age of 7, he rewrote the history of American music with his piano-infused soul, jazz, country, and R&B. Georgia on My Mind, Hit the Road Jack, I Got a Woman. Each song is a chapter in the history of Black American culture. But what the public doesn't know is that Ray Charles was on the brink of death many times in silence. In the late 80s, he began to struggle with kidney and liver complications due to decades of heroin and alcohol use. He had long been sober, but the lingering effects were still slowly taking their toll on his health every day. In 1995, at a performance in Kansas City, Ray was playing You Don't Know Me when his hand slipped off the keys. The audience didn't notice, but his former musician, David Newman, understood. Ray was shaking, his voice was hoarse, and backstage, he was vomiting blood. An ambulance was called, but Ray refused to be hospitalized. "Don't let anyone see me weak," he said. "I'm still Ray Charles." Starting in 2000, he began canceling shows. The reason given was personal issues. In reality, he was undergoing intensive treatment for liver, kidney, and heart failure. Doctors told him he had less than 2 years left without a transplant. But he refused. He spent his final days in a mansion in Beverly Hills, which had once been a musical paradise. Now there was only a faint sound. Ray didn't want anyone to see him in a wheelchair, said a family member. He would rather disappear than let people see him not be himself. Ray Charles died in 2004, leaving behind an irreplaceable void. But before that, he quietly withdrew from the stage like a blind soldier who knew he had reached the end of his journey. Ray's story is not just about music. It is about a life that overcame everything and then ultimately had to bow to the law of life and death. But he lived every note to the fullest, and that is what each of us should remember, to live so that even if we are blind, hurt, or exhausted, we can still leave behind an immortal piece of music of our own. 15. David Ruffin, the forsaken soul of the Temptations. David Ruffin is not just the lead singer of the Temptations. He is the burning heart in every melody, the trembling soul in every verse. Ain't too proud to beg, my girl. No one sings with such real pain if they have not lived with it. Elegant in appearance, confident in demeanor, but David always carries within him an emptiness that is hard to name. Behind the halo, he struggles with chronic lung disease, the result of many years of smoking and using illegal drugs. But what made David leave music was not just the damaged lungs, but the mental illness that smoldered and destroyed his every thought, every emotion. In 1989, during a private practice session in Detroit, David suddenly stood still for dozens of minutes, eyes blankly staring at the wall, not reacting even though the music was still playing. I thought he was concentrating, recalled close friend Otis Williams. But when I got closer, David was crying, silently. He whispered, "I can't hear the music anymore." After that, David repeatedly canceled shows, went to the studio, and then left mid-set. He said he was suffocating even though no one was in the room. When he was lucid, he sang as if nothing had happened. But then he was lost in hallucinations and lost his way. Once he was found wandering the streets in the middle of winter without a coat, mumbling incoherent lyrics. That's when his family was forced to take him to treatment. David Ruffin did not announce his retirement, but the stage did not call him anymore. Mental illness and respiratory failure extinguished one of the most emotional voices in R&B history. In 1991, he died of a drug overdose, a sudden but not unexpected death. Many mourned, but those close to him knew David had long since left music. It was just that the world refused to believe it. Some artists do not live in the dark, but in their hearts. David's story reminds us that sometimes what kills a talent is not a lack of opportunity, but a lack of healing. 14. Melvin Franklin. The solid wall collapsed in silence. Melvin Franklin was the rhythm keeper of the Temptations. His deep bass voice was like the musical foundation for the whole group. Without needing to stand out, he stood there, solid, stable, and never left his position. To the audience, Melvin was unbreakable, but his body said otherwise. As early as the 1970s, Melvin was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, an autoimmune disease that causes severe swelling and pain in the joints. He hid his pain, performing with such high doses of painkillers that doctors warned him of nerve damage. During a performance in 1993, Melvin suffered a full-body cramp in the middle of a song. He didn't fall. He tried to sing the last line, but backstage an assistant discovered that he couldn't stand up. His hands were cramped. His legs had lost feeling. The first mild paralysis had begun. His doctor ordered him to stop performing immediately. The disease had affected his nervous system, and if he continued, he could lose his mobility forever. Melvin asked only one thing: "Can I record one more song?" That was his last recording. After that, he withdrew completely, living with the help of his family. A niece said that every morning, Melvin would sit in a chair, play old records, and sing along without words. When someone asked, "Do you want to go back on stage?" he just shook his head. "I was there. Now, I just want to hear it again." In 1995, after a series of seizures due to neurological complications, he passed away in his sleep. The media reported, friends mourned, but perhaps the audience never knew how much he fought just to keep the group intact. Melvin Franklin is proof that not everyone strong is immortal. Some people carry the world on their shoulders until their shoulders can no longer bear it. And there are also silent pains that a lifetime of dedication cannot dispel. If you are still healthy, do not take that as a given. Live each day to the fullest, as if your own body is a miracle that needs to be preserved. 13. Curtis Mayfield. The immobile genius who still writes songs with his soul. Curtis Mayfield is one of the most influential funk soul artists in American music history. He was the voice of the civil rights movement, the heart of faith, struggle, and love through songs like People Get Ready and Move On Up. but behind the hopeful sound of his guitar was a fate that shocked the world. In August 1990, while performing outdoors in Brooklyn, an accident occurred. A large lighting fixture fell from above, crushing him on stage. The impact broke his cervical vertebrae. Curtis Mayfield was instantly paralyzed from the neck down. He could no longer move, but his mind was still clear. His heart was still beating. And even though he could not lift a finger, he still composed music. Relatives said that he wrote songs by singing each verse to the technician, editing each word with just his breath and eyes. His last album, New World Order, is a testament to that determination. Mayfield recorded lying on his back, unable to breathe completely, but each word still resonated with humanity. A friend said, "He was not just an artist. He was an indomitable spirit, not giving up even when the whole world told him to stop." Curtis Mayfield passed away in 1999 from lung complications. But he lived up to the message he always sang: not everyone who walks slowly is a quitter. There are people who, even though they are immobile, still move forward with music, with faith. That story makes us understand that living beautifully is not about running faster than anyone else, but about constantly moving forward in the mind. And music, if it comes from the soul, will never be silent. 12th, Aretha Franklin. The great voice quietly dies in pain. Aretha Franklin is not just the queen of soul. She is the definition of strength, of black beauty, of pride through her voice that makes the whole world bow down. From respect to natural woman, Aretha not only sings, she inspires to live, love, and stand up for herself. But that halo gradually faded when silent pain began to invade her body. Since 2010, Aretha has begun to show unusual signs. She canceled many performances without reason, refused to be interviewed, and refused to go out. Fans were worried, but she always said she was fine. Until 2011, rumors spread that she had cancer, but no one confirmed it. One evening in Chicago, Aretha appeared on stage with a skinny body, holding her stomach tightly. Although she sang the entire Bridge Over Troubled Water, her voice was no longer as strong as before. She had to sit down to rest in the middle of the song. A backstage staff member said that when she went into the break room, she burst into tears. "I could no longer control my body." The final diagnosis was pancreatic cancer, a deadly disease, progressing silently, painfully, and almost impossible to cure in its late stages. She refused chemotherapy, choosing to live out her final months in the house in Detroit where she had started it all. Aretha Franklin died in 2018, but she had retired from the stage many years earlier, in silence, without stage lights, without an audience. Only her recordings live on. Her voice is her legacy, and her decision to step down is a reminder that even the strongest people need a break. We all have our limits, but if we stay true to our hearts, our voices will outlive our lives. You have walked with us through 10 stories of loss. Thank you for not turning away, for daring to look straight into the truth behind the spotlight. But the story is not over. There are souls whose names have not been spoken. Some voices once rang out, now only in memory. If they were born in this era, had better care, and had a proper rest, would they still be alive? Or was it because of that pain that they became legends? Please leave your thoughts. 11. Jean Knight, queen of a hit and her silent heart collapse. Jean Knight once stirred up America with the song Mr. Big Stuff in 1971, a hit that unexpectedly became a feminist icon at that time. Her vibrant voice, decisive pronunciation, and bold appearance made Jean stand out among the crowd of soul singers. But no one expected that. Behind that halo, she lived a quiet and painful life. In her final years, Jean was diagnosed with chronic heart disease. Irregular heartbeat, erratic blood pressure, and sudden chest pains caused her to gradually withdraw from the entertainment industry. A close friend recounted that while preparing to perform at a small event in Louisiana, Jean collapsed right after stepping off the stage due to difficulty breathing. She did not say a word, just signaled to be quiet, and was taken home. Jean refused invasive treatment. She chose to live peacefully with her family, away from the media. "I don't want people to remember me on my deathbed," she once said. "I want them to remember me as a woman who stood up and sang for herself." Jean Knight died in 2023 as quietly as she left the stage, but her voice still resonates in the memories of those who felt empowered by her music. There are hearts that don't stop beating because of applause, but quietly drain away in self-respect. We only live once, and Jean lived as a silent warrior. 10. Bobby Womack, storyteller of pain and fading memories. Bobby Womack was a true soul genius. His voice cracked like his heart. Each song was a confession, a vivid memoir. But surprisingly, this profound storyteller gradually withdrew from the stage, not because of a lack of passion, but because of a betrayal of memory. In the early 2010s, Bobby began to show signs of confusion. While performing, he forgot the lyrics to his own songs. One time in London, he paused for a few seconds in the middle of Across 110th Street, then looked up at the band and asked, "Where am I?" That was the first warning. The diagnosis confirmed that he had early-stage Alzheimer's and prostate cancer. Bobby continued to perform for a few more shows, but the fatigue in his eyes was obvious. A close friend said that, in the last meeting, Bobby sat at the piano but did not play, just put his hands on the keys and said, "I remember the melody, but I don't remember why it hurt so much." In 2014, he passed away. But many years before that, he had quietly said goodbye to the stage. For Bobby, retirement was not a failure, but a way to preserve the last beautiful image. That story makes us understand that sometimes the scariest thing is not death, but when memories fade and we no longer recognize ourselves. So, live each day to the fullest before memory drops us in the middle of life. 9. Donny Hathaway, the genius caught between music and darkness. Donny Hathaway is a phenomenon. His voice is like a bridge between earth and sky, a gospel soul poured into soul and jazz. Love songs like "A Song for You" or "Someday We'll All Be Free" are prayers full of humanity. But behind that bright music is a darkness that no one can touch. Donny suffers from schizophrenia. When he is on stage, everything seems fine. But behind the scenes, there are paranoia, whispers that no one can hear. He was once caught talking to a TV that was off, thinking that the FBI was watching him through the hotel sound system. In 1979, while recording with Roberta Flack for a reunion project, Donny suddenly disappeared from the studio. Hours later, he was found dead from a 15th-floor window at the Essex House Hotel in New York. No one knows what happened in his final moments, but his family believes it was the surrender of a soul that had no way out. Donny Hathaway never said goodbye to the stage, but illness pulled him away from the light silently and completely. We cannot control what happens in our minds, but we can choose how to face it, and most importantly, never let anyone walk into the darkness alone. 8. Billy Preston, the Beatles' fifth man, was abandoned by his own body. Billy Preston was once known as the fifth man of the Beatles, a keyboard genius who could make the world vibrate with just a few notes. He performed alongside Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and the Rolling Stones. But few people know that behind that extraordinary talent was a desperate battle with kidney disease and liver failure that lasted for decades. In the early 2000s, Billy gradually disappeared from the big stages. A close friend recounted that during a recording session, he had to stop halfway because of dizziness and loss of bladder control. That humiliation made Billy burst into tears, cover his face, and exclaim, "I can't play music if I can't control my body." Billy refused to perform from then on. His body gradually deteriorated. In 2006, he passed away in silence. But for those who heard his music, it was the final cry of a genius betrayed by his own body. Take care of your body as you would your soul, because one day, when it is exhausted, passion cannot save it. 7. Minnie Riperton, the 5-octave angel whose wings were broken by cancer. Minnie Riperton was the embodiment of purity. Her voice could reach up to the 5th octave, a feat of vocals. The song, "Lovin' You," was like a sweet lullaby for a generation. But no one knew that when she sang those melodies, she was hiding a deadly pain. In 1976, Minnie was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. She decided to go public with her illness, becoming a spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. But deep down, she knew she didn't have much time left. During a television performance, she held her stomach, her voice wavering. Backstage, she told her husband, "I can't sing like I used to." She withdrew from the stage, spending time with her children. In 1979, she passed away at the age of 31. Her voice died too young, leaving a void that could not be filled. Listen to your body, and if there is anything you want to sing, don't wait. Sing it today. 6. Luther Ingram. The voice that holds the heart fades quietly. Luther Ingram once made many people feel heartbroken with the lyrics, "If loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right." His voice was full of confession, like an honest confession in the night. But behind the stage lights, there was the darkness of a long battle with severe kidney failure. In the late 90s, Luther began regular dialysis. He still sang, but the duration gradually decreased. Once performing at a small hall in Missouri, he walked out on stage with trembling legs, having to sit and sing instead of standing. After that show, he announced that he would no longer tour. His younger brother recalled, "He looked in the mirror and said, 'The audience deserves to see me as I am, not a shadow of the past.'" Luther Ingram withdrew quietly, without farewells, without noise. He passed away in 2007. A voice born to touch the heart, but was melted by illness from within. If your heart is still strong, do not hesitate to love, live, and give like Luther did. 5. Isaac Hayes. The man in gold collapsed under the pressure of blood and destiny. Isaac Hayes is a unique figure, bald head, dark glasses, heavy gold chains, and a deep baritone voice like the commandments of God. Not only was he an Oscar-winning musician, but he also shaped the sound of soul through Shaft and a series of legendary film scores. But behind the powerful exterior was a body more fragile than he ever admitted. In 2006, Isaac was hospitalized after a stroke. All his performances were canceled. A relative said that during his practice after being discharged from the hospital, his hands were shaking so much that he could not hit the right notes. He quietly left, saying nothing. After that, he stopped all musical activities, living in seclusion on his Tennessee farm. In 2008, he suddenly passed away at home. No one expected the powerful man on stage to collapse because of his own heart. Remember that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to stop. And living a slow pace is also a way to live longer, live more fully. 4. Linda Jones. The soprano who fell in the middle of her youth. Linda Jones had one of the sweetest and most emotional soprano voices in the soul world. Her song, "Hypnotized," melted many hearts. But her life was as short as the high notes in that love song. Linda had had diabetes since she was young, but she always hid her illness so as not to worry the audience. In 1972, while performing at a small tea room in Harlem, Linda suddenly asked permission to withdraw after finishing a song. She whispered to her manager, "I'm cold all over, I can't see clearly." That was the last time she stood on stage. Just a few hours later, she fell into a coma due to complications from diabetes and never woke up. Linda passed away at the age of 27. A talent that had just blossomed was plucked by an illness without warning. Life is fragile. Take care of yourself as you would a precious musical note. 3. Betty Wright. The silent funk soul warrior in the final battle. Betty Wright was more than just a voice. She was a fire. She was a woman who turned all pain into strength through songs like "Clean Up Woman" or "Tonight is the Night." She was a mentor to a generation of young singers like Beyoncé and always carried the spirit of a warrior with her. But in the last years of her life, Betty gradually disappeared. Relatives revealed that she had been fighting cancer for many years. She still recorded, still sang, but no longer performed. During one of her last recording sessions, the technician said that she had to sit down and rest after each verse, but she still said, "I have to record this message. This is the last time." Betty died in 2020, leaving behind endless regrets. But she fought until the last moment with her voice. We cannot avoid death, but we can choose to live like Betty, burning out, not silent, not retreating. 2. Sharon Jones. The retro flame that burned in the middle of the new century, then extinguished too quickly. Sharon Jones was not a star in her 20s. She became famous late, only being recognized in her 40s, but her fiery voice and fiery performance style seemed to be taking revenge on time. She was the queen of retro soul, the heart of the Dap Kings, the one who brought an entire genre of music back to the spotlight. But that flame was quickly challenged by an unexpected illness. In 2013, Sharon was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She took a break from performing for treatment, then surprisingly returned to the stage just a few months later, bald, frail, but full of life. People said she defied death, but only those close to her knew. The pain tormented her every night. During one of her final performances in New York, Sharon collapsed backstage as soon as the spotlight went out. She told her assistant, "I want the audience to see me as Sharon Jones." She officially retired from performing after that. A year later, she passed away surrounded by her loved ones. Sharon lived a short life, but she lived a brilliant life. Her life is proof that sometimes we can't choose when we come or when we go, but we can choose how we burn as brightly as possible. 1. Ernie Isley. The Isley clan's silent warrior falls in silence. Ernie Isley was the quietest brother in the legendary family, the Isley brothers, but he was the guitar that gave life to That Lady, the instrumental brain behind many groundbreaking funk and R&B hits. Much younger than his brothers, Ernie was the band's creative spark in the 1980s and 1990s. However, in the early 2000s, Ernie began to appear less and less. No more touring, no more solo recordings. Relatives revealed that he suffered from peripheral neuropathy, a disorder that causes muscles and reflexes to lose control. He often experienced numbness in his hands, sudden spasms, and loss of feeling in his fingertips, the worst thing for a guitarist. During a recording session, he sat in front of his guitar for an hour without being able to play a single chord. He put down the guitar and said, "I can't fool the audience." From then on, he withdrew, living in the shadows of the stage, although his soul still burned with the music. Ernie Isley did not die, but a part of him left when his fingers stopped listening. And that is the painful truth. Sometimes artists do not leave art. It is their bodies that refuse to continue. Live fully while you can still hold on to what you love, because no one knows when the body will stop accompanying your dreams. Behind every halo are silent battles with illness, loneliness, and sacrifice. Cherish each voice, each song, because maybe it is the last time they sing. Understanding is the noblest way to love an artist, and love is the only gift that illness cannot take away. Thank you for listening and sympathizing with the stories that no one wants to tell. If you have ever been moved by any of their voices, please leave a comment as a tribute. Don't forget to like and share the video so that those souls continue to live in the hearts of music lovers.